And that means you got to spend some time at home practicing. Instead of laying on the couch, instead of having a barbecue, maybe start the barbecue 30 minutes later. And we said that every technique you teach should be taught in very few steps. And what if I taught you a technique? If we agree with this statement, what's the best technique? What's the best technique is the one you remember when your life depends on it the most. So if you have a lot of complicated moves that needs more practice, well, the number one issue in departments is training. I need officers that are listening to this podcast, think about their training as an investment. And if professional football players, which is a pretty rough sport, if they only did a jersey practice of no touch twice a week, you probably have deaths on Sunday's game. And if the only training you're doing back at your organization is what they give you in service, and you're not practicing the skills that they train you in, we have a slogan that says, training without practice is a fool's bet. And they're rolling dice on something they can't control the outcome. So they have to go back and practice. Well, if something's not easy to remember, you can't practice it. But the easiest technique in the world still needs to be practiced. Still, you need to practice it in here. It needs to practice coming out of here. And it needs to practice in here. So we taught about left hand, right hand, front and rear. And one guy said, well, Dave, we're still doing the same thing. Well, that's the point. Teach them one technique. What if they grab their left shoulder, their right shoulder, both shoulders? We taught the apex, the same technique. I said, usually by the second hour, in the beginning of the class, some of you are going to get bored. Well, how come we're not doing anything different? Well, if you look at any elite unit in any group, it's just perfecting the basics. They do that very well. And you want to practice until you can't get it wrong. And that means you got to spend some time at home practicing. Instead of laying on the couch, instead of having a barbecue, maybe start the barbecue 30 minutes later. But without practice, we're never going to be able to perform at the level of intensity because our lives depend on our performance.
Yep.
And if I have a partner, so does theirs. So then we went to chokes. What if they choke you with the right hand, the left hand, or both hands? I said, what are we going to do then? By then they caught on. We're going to do the apex. Absolutely. Now, what if we're knocked to the ground and they grab our shoulders? We're going to do the apex. So first 2.5 hours, we did everything standing up. In the last hour, we went on the ground. And they could see that it was the same technique that was applicable in a variety of settings. And when they left, I had them teach it back to each other. It's an instructor police conference. So I want you to use a different training format. I want you to show them the technique without talking. Then I want you to stop and explain what they just saw. And then I want you to give them an example of how this technique would be formed in the context. You're doing a field side sobriety test, you're doing a blanket arm, you escort, and they turn and grab you. But tell the person you're training how this technique is going to be applied. And if it answers that one question at the end of the day, which asks what was their biggest takeaway? Well, it was the same technique. It was easy to remember. It worked on the ground and standing up. Because if we had 4 hours every month with every officer for physical skills that combine verbalization with physical alternatives, everything I just said doesn't matter anything. Because right now, most departments get 4 hours, 8 hours a year. And if you compartmentalize your training, they get farther and farther away from what's going to be applicable in the street. And that's what I try to put together during that block.
Thanks for watching this clip of the Tactical Breakdown Podcast. To get access to more interviews just like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and that little notification bell. Or, even better, come join us on the ILEETA Network, ILEET.network, where you will get access to world-leading instructors, trainers, hundreds of hours of training content designed to change the standard of law enforcement training. We'll see you there.